Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. We have a very unusual and interesting subject today for you all, and I hope you'll find it of interest. And that is the relationship between modern and contemporary art, which we couldn't think of a better venue to do this than Art Basel Miami. And I just would like to start out by talking a little bit about each of our members of our illustrious panel, because once you know a little bit about us, then you can know our point of view and have an idea of what it is that we're getting at here. And please think of some questions as we go along, and we'll have some time at the end to address all of your interests and questions. So I would like to just say a few words about myself, because I've had a long relationship with Art in America magazine, and I also do a monthly column for ArtNet News and Yale University Press online, so you could see some of my work. And those venues give me an opportunity to write about a broad range of topics, from modern art to the most cutting-edge contemporary works, especially for Art in America and for ArtNet. And for my work with Yale, I get to write about a lot of historical pieces. So let me start out by introducing our panel. We have, to my right, Hubert Newman, a very esteemed collector of mostly contemporary art, and who has a number of interesting projects. Not only contemporary, sorry. He will correct me as we go along, I am sure. To his right is David Fleiss, who's got one of the most prestigious galleries in Paris, and Gallery 1900 to 2000. And he has a lot of interesting stories to tell us about how his father founded this gallery to have a venue for Man Rays specifically, which is such a fascinating thing for me to listen to today. And then to his right is one of the internationally renowned painters of our time, and that is Ahmed Al-Sudani. Thank you for being here. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Niklas, I'm going to pronounce this wrong.
Svennung.
Thank you. Who has one of the most prestigious galleries of contemporary art in the world, that's Chantal Crousel, who shows some of my favorite contemporary artists, including Gabriel Orozco and Pierre Huyghe and many, many others, which you'll tell us about some more.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I just have to say, I grew up I was born out in Morrisville, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia Museum of Art was my museum. That was the museum that I founded all of my writing on since I was a kid. So that museum's, great collection of the Arnsbergs and a lot of modernist works that I feel contemporary art should, or the best contemporary art builds upon. So I would just like to ask each of our panelists about what their background is and how they developed this interest in modern and contemporary art. Could you start, Hubert?
How does this work?
You just talk into it.
Talk into it? Okay. I come from a family that's into the fourth generation of collecting. Personally, I've been doing this for over 60 years. And the collection spans both great modernist work and what we call contemporary, which I think is probably post-Basquiat. So that's the way I look at it anyway. And going back to Philadelphia, one of my mentors is Barnes. And when I first started, I read everything Barnes had to say. And I still follow a lot of those precepts, which are important in developing the original vocabulary.
Could you just say a
in
few
an
words
original.
about those precepts in case somebody
The
would
what?
like? You mentioned Barnes's precepts. Can you just
Well,
give
I mean, he
little
wrote a heck
insight?
of a lot of books on it, so I assume the audience knows all about that. Okay? I mean, you know. Well, basically, he goes back to fundamentals that are involved with what constitutes the possibility of a great work of art, which is mirroring the real at that moment. So his reel stopped, say, in the middle 40s, say, with some of the Matisses he bought. So, and then, of course, we're in a very different space today. So basically, I don't really find a big difference or problem with modern versus contemporary as long as the work is really groundbreaking. And that's a big word. And very few artists are able to accomplish that. So this is what we're involved with contemporary, essentially, in collecting it. So, shall I?
Yeah, well, thank you. We'll come
let
back.
other people
David,
talk.
tell us, inform us.
So, I'm a dealer in Paris. I have a gallery. My father opened the gallery in 1972 because of his friendship with Man Ray, who had no gallery at the time. And since then, we've been dealing mostly in surrealism. But I'm very interested in seeing how contemporary artists, contemporary gallerists are looking at what we are selling. And I like mixing contemporary art and modern art. And I hope that most of the collection would be like Hubert's collection, that everything is together like in any museum in the world. That's my main goal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ahmed.
Should I work? Can you hear me or? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to answer exactly because as an artist, you just go to art school, so they force you to study modern and specific artists. And coming from different background, I left in Iraq in 1995. I spent 4 years in Syria, and in 1999 I came to the States. Mention my background, it's just we don't have that much really access to that much like work, except you see it in books and magazines. So to me, coming to the States with have access to all this work, it's try to absorb as much as I can, seeing the work in firsthand, in person. It was such an like breathtaking. And for me, it just, I kind of, when you go to a museum and you see great works of like 18th or 19th century or early 20th century, it's just, to me, it's like a journey going through the history. And after I finished school in 2008, I found myself, I'm really diving through that history. So if you look to my work, you see I really probably steal from at least 10 to 15 artists in every single painting. And I think that's kind of an answer the question how we do relate to the history of painting in general.
Thank you. Niklas?
Well, since I'm quickly going to introduce my experience, which starts with my mother founding the gallery in 1979 in my father's apartment to begin with. But and I'm working with her as a partner associate now since 2000, so about 16 years already. And just to quickly relate to what we're already starting to build as a conversation, as the importance of history with a linear, continuous experience without interruption, and with the idea of, as my experience at least as a dealer, as a gallery of second generation, to continue and, well, propose lectures that are not disconnected from the past, not disconnected from modern, not disconnected from history. I think I don't see things just as contemporary without thinking of the big influences of the 20th century modern artists on among many other artists of our program that are of course have absorbed and had digested and refer and quote continuously artists of the Duchamp, Brotas, and so many others that are without which their work wouldn't stand today. So it's interesting that both David and I are second generation. So I guess the idea of continuity in collecting as well is something we can talk about further. I don't know. It depends where you want to bring the idea.
Well, there are a lot of things that I would like to cover. First, I want to backtrack a little and ask Ahmed about, were you aware of modernist movements in Iraq, Iraqi art? What was your...
Well, I left a year after I finished high school, so I wasn't really aware of it in the way that, like, as a movement. It's something we just almost everybody knew about Picasso or Matisse, but
what about Iraqi artists?
I really cannot speak about. I haven't been back for the last 25 years, but definitely Iraq has, in the region compared to other places, the government started sending students in 1930, which is quite early time for that. But definitely they teach it. I didn't study in art school in Iraq, so I don't know that much information. But definitely it's a part of the history, so they have to teach it.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to, we're bantering about modernism and contemporary. If you're familiar with Bruno Latour, he says that there's never been anybody who's defined modernism, and it really doesn't exist. It's only an extension of past issues, of the way compositions are made and so on. On the other hand, I define contemporary as an artist that's still alive. We have to come to some definitions here, because otherwise we're going to just...
What about an artist like, for instance, Tunga, one of the great Brazilian artists who just passed away? Is he now no longer regarded as a contemporary artist? He's a Brazilian artist. And I'm just saying that if someone has contributed such a great deal to contemporary art and they've passed away.
If you want to extend my definition to something else, then let's talk about that. But I think we do need some definitions here.
May I just, I don't know, as an artist, when you practice, you really just don't go to your studio loaded with a specific rule. You want to make a painting belong to a specific school or style. Knowing contemporary or modern or even Renaissance is a part of your knowledge. And how to visualize your thought has something to do with when you're alive. We use a certain element in the work. It's belong to our time. So I don't really feel there is like a clear line between modern and contemporary. To me, it just never disappear. It's just like a build-up on it, like any other writer or philosopher or even filmmaker.
I feel, this is just my own opinion, as Niklas and David, what their opinion is, but I feel that modernism is the art that was opposed to the academy, that was opposed to Bouguereau and specifically the French Academy, and beginning, I guess, with Picasso and Braque and Cubism. And that's modernism up till the Abex era. And then after the 60s, the pop art, then it's contemporary art.
That would be...
As long as we use the same definitions, I'm okay with that.
That's more the market definition of contemporary and modern would be,
if it works,
up to the 60s modern and then contemporary. But it's true that we are still living, and now the 60s pop looks more like modern than contemporary.
Is contemporary going to last forever? Is it going to be the term? Are we stuck in contemporary
New contemporary.
now? Or are we going to be post-internet? Is that a new contemporary? Is that, I don't know. We can get into these definitions too, or if it's relevant to try to...
I can be very clear about my position. My position is that basically modernism has a pretty consistent space, which happens to be one of the terms that's used by Barnes, and it's really revolves around a type of closure. And I think that what happened with the Koons generation is that space was decimated, and that's where we are today. And I call that after-modernism. That means about modernism, but in terms of going forward. So what I've been collecting in the last 30 years is what I call after-modernism. What exists today, in my estimation, is after-modernism and late modernism. And I think most of what you see here in this gestalt here is late modernism. And I don't think, personally, that's what's really the cutting edge.
The avant-garde?
What?
The avant-garde?
I can't hear.
Avant-garde.
Not avant-garde.
What?
Not avant-garde. Is that what you're saying?
I think avant-garde is, you can call it whatever you want, but I think that after-modernism has a very different space. And it's also echoed by some very, very serious philosophers. And it's about the issues of openness that is created by our internet and social media, and this permeates all of our real today, and that if you're really going to find radical approaches to the vocabulary, that's where you have to look. The rest is, from my point of view, interesting, and some of the artists are incredibly talented, but they're not pushing the visual vocabulary the way our real is. And that's what Barnes has always talked about.
Could you be more specific about what artists you're talking about? I mean,
Well, I can tell you, okay, I can be very specific, and we're totally transparent. We have developed a community page on Facebook. We've posted hundreds of works that show what I'm talking about by over 30 artists. David and I intersect with one artist specifically. His name is Xavier Villon. I've collected Xavier before you collected him about 20 years ago.
Who will represent France?
What?
He will be representing France in the upcoming
That's
Venice
right.
Biennale.
And he also was given Versailles after Jeff Koons. And Laurent Lebon chose those two guys who are, in my opinion, after-modernist artists to be the two initial Versailles people. And what he did was he cut into a completely modernist concept, which Versailles is, with after-modernism, which cut into it and put a hole in it and made it not have closure. And that's, I think, a really exciting thing that happened. But of course, most of the people in America have no conception that that even happened.
Do you agree with that, David?
Yes, I do. But we are talking about our definitions of contemporary art, but I think it's what I would like is not to stop. There's no limit between modern and contemporary. Yes. It's one thing.
Well, no, I wonder about that. One of the questions I wanted to ask Niklas and you are, what do you see are differences between collectors of modern art, say pre-World War II, and more contemporary works? Collectors.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, David, you might have a very different knowledge and opinion, but we tend naturally, as a contemporary art gallery, to work and advise and sell works to people who are buying contemporary art. And there are very organized, structured, and they're trying to build a structure of knowledge and choices that is quite, of course, limited to the space and their budget, but that unfortunately doesn't connect so often to the previous generations. So, and they're very busy trying to figure out what is contemporary and what is going on in their own generation and perception of their times. So, to say that there is a lack of connectivity, I find, between the fact of collecting contemporary and deciding to be,
But I think that's changing a lot with contemporary galleries that are now also dealing in modern art, like Gagosian selling Picasso, Hauser and Wirth selling Picabia,
Right.
Michael Werner as well. And that is opening eyes to contemporary art collector on modern art.
it's changing.
It's changing.
The
Well,
market is.
No?
I don't think, yes, I agree with you. I mean, I live with great modernist pieces and great after-modernist pieces. And they're in the same room, and they're perfectly compatible.
They should be in the same room.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
That's no question. And so,
But you're very few like this.
Pardon me?
You are very few like this, mixing
that's
all
not my
together.
problem.
That's,
No, well,
that
that's
was
mine.
that was
No.
my
That's
question.
mine.
That was
It's
my
up to
question.
the dealers
Do
to
you-
make more collectors that
col-
are like this.
Do collectors of modern art have a deeper art historical knowledge?
Listen,
than
to be a
contemporary?
collector of modern art today is virtually impossible. You have to have hundreds of millions of dollars, and then you very seldom get a AAA picture or AAA piece.
Yeah.
If you really want to delve into the best of modernism, how are you going to do it today? It's
Contemporary
virtually
is
impossible.
reachable.
What?
Contemporary is reachable.
That's right.
yeah.
And that's where the real action is. And you can see it in the way the auction houses are dealing with contemporary. They put the contemporary auction before the modern because the product of modern is like the train left the station, essentially. Okay? Unless you're a late modernist artist, like John Curran, say. You're a talented artist, but he's not of our moment. He's like a poor man's Boucher or something. For me, I talk very honestly about how I feel. I don't expect everybody to feel the same way about John Curran, but I know the work very well.
Ahmed, you've talked about the relationship of your work to Cubism and modernist art. Can you add something to what Hubert said?
It's interesting to find myself here sitting in between collector and gallerist. It's really, we try to find a term or like a specific meaning for contemporary or from their perspective. As again, really, there is no way, probably disagree with me, but there is no way to decide this piece belongs to this period and the other piece of work belongs to
I think there is a way.
Yeah. So we have probably a different opinion, but
Absolutely.
yeah. It's but for me as a painter who work right now, it just you won't be able to make a work unless you have a knowledge about what's happened before you, and I think that's applied to any other art form.
Yeah.
So being in a contemporary, you said that you have to be alive. Part of it, I agree with it, but just because you are
Well,
making something it exists
I mean,
right now.
don't put it in concrete, man. I mean, yeah,
yes.
it's a working definition, and you can have exceptions to it.
Of course, always you have exception to it.
I understand that.
Yeah, but what I meant is just making work right now. It's really. I will talk about myself, my practice. I try to understand the space in the Cubism movement. I try to understand the surface in a certain artist in a New York school or a post-American painters.
And what is it about that exploration that excites you? What draws you to that?
I do think this is the tool that I need to present my work to it. It just, like any other, let's say, writer, you won't be able, or like a poet, you do understand, let's say you read Eliot, and if you're good at it, you understand what he's saying, but you're not going to copy what he said because he's a great of what he have done. So to understand, to absorb what he did, and you just try to break through or something belong to your time and has something on your voice. So again, when I look to my work, when I'm in my studio procrastinating for 2-3 hours before I start, I just really go through from, I will say, from Renaissance to, from Caravaggio, if I do, well, like a name, certain names, from Caravaggio to Picasso to Gaston to Kuhn. So,
well, I think that's just a normal process. I mean, Xavier takes a lot of his work out of Cubism, and then he changes it totally in terms of its space.
of course.
And so that's what's unique, but he doesn't only do that. There are artists I collect that appropriate in different ways Caravaggio, or that Ben Edwards is another artist that goes back to Cubism and to old masters. That isn't the issue. That is not the issue.
What's
the issue is, if for me, I only say for me, does the object radically reflect the new real that we're all living in? And how radical is it? Is it really mysterious? Is it really something that nobody can understand, essentially? Even the artist. Is it magical? Has it really advanced the vocabulary in a way which is radical?
Is it going to stay in the history?
And that's what constitutes great art. The rest of it is going to be forgotten. Forgotten. Galleries are going to be forgotten. The only thing that's going to last are a few artists, the works, and the collections that were formed by either individuals or by institutions.
Of course,
Yeah,
this is the...
that's it. That's it. That's
this
the rest
is the
of
lesson of history. This is, of course, there is...
Of course.
Yeah.
So, but then we have to differentiate. See,
Yeah.
this is the big issue, is how do you differentiate between what is basically late modernism, which took about, I don't know, 50 years for people to even get around to modernism. Okay? I've lived through it. Everybody said it was shit. Okay? And finally they get to it, and now these schools are pumping out artists like crazy that are basically late modernists. And they're not radical artists. And they get into the capitalist system, and some of them get elevated to where they shouldn't be. Okay? Okay?
Niklas, you were
and
about to-
that's our world today, right back of us.
Of course.
Okay? So that's
Niklas,
the
you were-
issue. Look, you can't change history. There's going to be a few artists that are going to live through it, and you got hundreds over there.
I mean, whatever happens now today, this tentative is of organizing our time and how we're fed with information, with a lot of information, too much information, obviously.
There's not too much information.
No, not at all.
No. There's never too much. It's how you process the information.
Okay, but say here the fair. We're here at the fair. We have this as a platform, a common platform to learn, to understand, to research, and then collectors or just the visitor has to come and get that
but-
space and.
I'll tell you how a good way to look at it is, at least from my point of view. I'm very opinionated.
No kidding.
That's obvious. Okay. When we bought great Giacometti and great Dubuffet, what informed obliquely the decision to go in that direction was existential philosophy. Okay? And what we felt was that those guys, in some weird way, transformed that philosophical approach into a visual object. And today, there are 2 or 3 significant philosophers that I believe in that are obliquely inform what we call after-modernism. One is Alain Badiou. You know him.
Yes.
Okay? He talks about set theory and its openness, its infinity, and so on, which is a whole... It isn't confined just to one element of the civilization. The way our universities are now working, where we have interdisciplinary thinking that we didn't have before, changes that paradigm in a real way, okay? And that all is about what we all live in. So to really understand the phenomenon, you have to understand our real with a capital R. And once you do that, you'll say, and probably everybody at this panel would agree, we're not in a modernist world. So what are we in?
Well, things are changing fast around us, very fast and very violently, very brutally. So there will be a before and after now, maybe. Will art deal with it? Can we, in 10, 20 years from now, will we be able to see that we were in this mutation, this shift? And will artists come out of it with a reaction that will remain in the history books? It's hard to say that in advance, but
Yeah, we're all trying to look into this
Well,
crystal
yeah,
ball.
of
and
course we
It's easy
are.
to make sort of
That's the
sweeping
challenge.
generalizations, but I think a big problem in the art world is there's not enough specifics. And you're talking about Alain Badiou, who's a brilliant writer, great philosopher. His background is theater. And I actually hosted an evening with him where he was talking about art, and he's the first to admit that, he has a philosophical idea about art, but its specifics are, he refers you to someone else. He's got, great ideas, but this is the kind of philosophy that is not specific to the art world. And
I said oblique. I used the word oblique.
My students respond more to Jean Baudrillard and also Foucault and some of the other people who preceded Badiou, especially, well, let's not go, Barthes and my favorite writer, Gaston Bachelard.
Well,
So
I
we
like
could get, that's a
Deleuze.
whole other thing, that's a whole other tangent. I mean, it's great, but it'll be another panel. David, you in an email exchange with me brought up such an interesting idea about contemporary artists who collect modern art, and I would like to hear more about that.
There are a lot of contemporary, most of them are interested in modern art. Maybe half of them do collect modern art because it's where they come from, it's their influence, and it's, I think, very important for them to own their père. Would you say that in English? In English?
Own their what?
Their
Generation?
yes, their fathers, or I don't know, leur père. And we've
Heritage, I guess.
yes, we've had at the gallery people very different from Richard Prince to Joseph Kosuth to.
What does Kosuth collect, just out of curiosity?
Kosuth loves Duchamp, loves Picabia, loves Man Ray, which is what we do mostly. So I would tell you the same names when you ask me what Jan Vaux saw in our gallery or Richard Prince. Do you collect, Ahmed?
If I have that much money, definitely I will collect them.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll give you my card.
No, but definitely, I always talk about waking up in the morning, looking to Gaston painting and have a coffee. So hopefully we'll do that at some point.
yeah, I'm always happy
You're
to
artists. You're
bring
artists,
clients to your gallery,
Yes.
artists. Yeah, Jan Vaux is a good example. He became he did a lot of research and became very obsessed with a few pieces of Duchamp mainly. But yeah,
He's a very, do we say cultivated or very instructed?
yeah,
Artist. He really knows the art history. I was amazed when he was in my storage. The names he would pick, people I would absolutely not imagine he would know, like Vols or very.
under the
Yes.
under the radar. let's say.
Exactly. And I really like artist collector like this. They buy with the art. He's one of them.
I do buy art students' work.
Ah, good.
Yeah, so thinking for maybe in 20, 30 years they will, or something.
There are also a lot of contemporary artists that buy their or do trade with other contemporary artists.
Yeah, of course.
Almost every artist that can do it, that I deal with, collects work that way. They trade work.
But when we saw like when the collection of someone like Warhol came up at auction, it was he was a huge collector of everything.
It's interesting. I just got Baldessari's sculpture.
Yes.
Yeah, just give a drawing to the fabricator, and he gave me one of the.
Good.
Yeah,
I'll
so-
give you
is
my
that?
card if you want to sell it.
What did you- I missed that last
I
story.
said we're talking about maybe artists could trade with each other. So I said the fabricator. I don't know about Sari in person, but I gave one of my drawing work on paper to the fabricator who worked with him, and they
I
got
see.
sculpture.
Oh, okay, that's
But I agree that a lot of this is generational in terms of collectors. But, for example, we get the metrics on our Facebook page or Instagram, and about 60% of the audience is between the ages of 18 and 32. Okay? So that just proves how generational these images are.
That's a
And
Facebook generation.
That's
also.
also the
Well, yeah.
I forbid my
it's
father to go on
but-
Facebook.
but
That's why.
Listen, hey, look, you know, what did you say?
I forbid my father to go on Facebook. You're one of that generation.
I'm older
that
than your
very-
father.
I
Come
know
on.
that you're one of that generation that's still active with
Well, but that's
social
our world,
media.
man. That's our world. If you deny that, you're denying the reality.
No, I don't
Okay.
deny
Speaking
it.
of the
No, but he
passage of
is.
time
No, I
and
forbid
You
him
want to? Gets
aging.
too excited.
He wants to.
We're getting close to our allotted time, so I have a question that I'd like to ask each of you to answer before we go to questions, and that is, what do you look for when you come to an art fair like Art Basel? Niklas, why don't you start? What do you
Collectors.
Look, what do you
I know
look
he looks for collectors.
Well, they look for me. No, we look for each other. It's a dance. Well, there are two sections I particularly enjoy, and the two polarities. One is the positions for the solo presentations or the younger generations of artists that are in general better presented or have a better chance to, and from which I learn. So I go and hang out a lot in these, but also this new historicals section that I think was very nicely done. And I enjoyed them. I realized I didn't know so much, and I appreciated the Mimo Rotella presentation, which was really mind-blowing. Also to connect with the younger generation of artists that should know Rotella if they don't already, because I think it's still so contemporary and it's a lot based on media and reproduction. And so anyway, just an example, but and yeah, I always spend a lot of time at David's booth because I learn a lot.
Ahmed?
This is my first time in Art Basel. The second time go to art fair. I don't really go to art fair. It's really weird for artists to be there.
That's another question I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you. Because what relationship, how do you divorce yourself from the marketing aspect of it, the commercial aspect? Do you look for other ideas that are out
I
there?
really don't know if I'm kind of, my case a little bit special. Like, I live in my own bubble. Like, most of the time, I really literally do nothing but to be in my studio. And then once in a while, just go to Chelsea, walk around, go to museum if there is something I should see. But going to the market, to art fair, is like a crazy. And there is no business for me to do it. I won't be able to see that much work. I really, after half an hour, I assume, even in Chelsea, like after an hour, I feel like I have enough information. The images like fall off my brain, so I won't be able to absorb anything else. So,
David?
When you ask what we're looking for, me in terms of a gallerist, or what I'm looking at?
To intellectually enrich your life, not specifically your state, your gallery.
So I sell modern art and I collect contemporary art. So I want to look at everything. all the booths, every work from modern to contemporary, because everything is mixing either in my collection or in my gallery, and that's
So
why
you
I'm
just
here.
keep an open mind. when
Yes,
you're looking at it.
definitely.
Okay. Hubert?
Well,
You came for the set, the panel.
I have a whole bunch of things I look for.
Just a few will be
Okay,
fine.
one thing is I see what trends have developed from one art fair to the next. So I don't see much Chinese now. I don't see much photographs now. I think a lot of that stuff I never liked anyway, so I don't think I missed anything. I also see a lot of people, a lot of artists that I'm happy I missed. Okay, and then
Okay,
I look
thank
for
you.
some wonderful examples of artists that I collect. And I sometimes find those, which is wonderful. Then I looked at because we span into modernism in a very substantial way, I want to see what these modernist guys are doing and whether the examples are AAA, AA, B plus, minus, and what the price structure is for these things. So I look at that too. So it's
Great.
a whole bunch of stuff.
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of time for questions, so does anyone have a question? Yes, please. Oh, they'll bring a mic to you shortly.
Oh. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Hi. Hubert, can you talk about how social media has influenced the art market, the art world, more specifically the structure of the art gallery system?
Well, I think that this whole issue of generational collecting, if that's what you want to talk about, is very significant. And all you have to do is look at an auction house selling a Basquiat to a 40-year-old guy for 56 million bucks. So there's this enormous amount of information out there that is, I think, wonderful, and that it will eventually end up seriously affecting curators' thinking, art historians' thinking, et cetera, et cetera. I think, on that subject, one of the most radical things that's happened a couple months ago is MoMA making this spectacular show, which you wouldn't expect MoMA to make because they were so conceptual, into Picabia. And getting rave reviews on the social media, rave reviews. And so if that doesn't affect people's thinking, what it shows is it's a whole new paradigm of how you approach what makes a great artist. That's pretty important.
Yeah, thank you. Another question, please?
Hubert,
Yes.
you said you like one of the after-modernists whose name is Xavier somebody?
Villon.
Villon.
He'll tell you how it's spelled.
VEILHAN.
Yeah, and he's become a superstar in Europe and virtually unknown in the United States. So that's an interesting phenomenon.
Why is that, do you think?
I have no
I
idea.
wouldn't say he's so unknown in the United States.
Oh,
Had
how
a
many?
show at
How many major?
Paratan last
How
year,
many?
which was very
Yes,
good.
his
And he-
exposure through Paratan,
And he's
a
got
French
a
dealer.
public art right on 6th Avenue.
Yeah, I
and
get that.
52nd
I understand all of
Street,
that.
A gigantic blue.
I understand that, but how
cubist
many
looking
major museums
sculpture.
have Xavier in their collections?
He's still young too, so
He's not
he
that
has
young.
time. We have another question, please.
And he was in Versailles, man. We don't have a Versailles.
We have another question.
Hi, Hubert. Now, what would you say is the difference between, what would you say the difference is between postmodern and contemporary art?
Well, I don't use the term postmodern. That's an architectural term that's been bastardized by architects and the idea of appropriation, et cetera, et cetera. I consciously use the word after-modernism or AM, which I like, AM, you know? And we call it an AM community, which is a really tight-knit community, okay? And there was a recent AM show put on in the Hamptons, and it changed the thinking of many, many collectors in the Hamptons. And they bought, I don't know, 50 paintings or something. So this whole thing is churning around in ways. For example, you see an AM artist at Perez, Matthew Ronet. He echoes Miro in many ways, but he also is the same generation as Xavier. So this thing is beginning to churn around in the halls of power, so to speak.
Is there another question? Here up front, the microphone is coming.
You had mentioned that when you go into the studio, you're not really thinking in terms of. Yes, you. I'm sorry. You're not thinking in terms of modernism or contemporary art. So how much of that is a marketing term? Do you think, everybody?
Well, in terms of market, I won't be able to answer the question. I really don't know. But to me, again, it's just there's no way for me just to go studying a specific style or school, then just go try to approach my canvas with it. So again, you see it as you absorb what you study, what you see, what you learn, and it just you try to visualize your thought in a way it's belong to the time that we belong to.
I don't think it's a marketing thing. It's an historical thing to have a definition between modern and contemporary. It's a timeline, or I don't know if you call that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way to extract marketing from the current things that go on in the art world. So in a sense, you can say my sitting up here is marketing,
But there's a trend, though.
Whatever.
You can speak about trends.
Well, listen, I have some opinions about modern.
We have
So-
just, sorry.
Whatever.
We have just time for one more question in the front.
Hubert, could you explain a little bit more of the differences between the aesthetic differences between modernism and what you understand after modernism to be?
Yeah, I can explain it. But the best way to explain it is not in words. I'll do something in words, but is to actually stand in front of an artwork and talk specifically about it. And once you do that, you're engaging what is really important, and that's the object of art. But these after-modernist people really do not respect the borders the same way a modernist painting does, by letting your eye come all the way around and keeping a unity and harmonies, not antagonisms, which is more after modernist. And it's like these things, like in a Matisse or a Picasso, resolve themselves, and you end up with an object that visually is about this. In a Koons or an Ashley Bickerton, it's about exploding outside the artwork. With Koons, he does it with reflective surfaces a lot.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Niklas, thank you. Ahmed, David.
Thank you.
Hubert, thank you all. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, guys.